So in order to give an example of constructivist learning, I'm going to use examples actually taken from astronomy and the scientific revolution, a time of intellectual ferment and development that really shaped much of the way in which we understand our world and our cosmos today. But to begin with, I need to first of all give you a sense of the chaos that is learning and knowledge in the first place. I want you to close your eyes just for a second. And I want you to imagine a time when you were lost. Maybe you were in a snowy field or a woods. Maybe you were out shopping with your parents at the store, or you were driving in a car and suddenly you lost track of where you were. The problem is, when you were lost in that particular moment, is that you had no landmarks. You had nothing that offered comprehensibility to the overall field and to the overall experience. Instead, you were constantly discombobulated, uncertain of whether the things that you saw were landmarks familiar or whether perhaps they were just entirely new places entirely. What you were having an experience of space. You were having an experience of uncertainty. Now go ahead and open your eyes again. And I want you to remember a time that you returned to the same place. But this time you had a GPS. Or you had shopped there enough that you knew where your mother would go moving around the store. Or you had wandered through the woods often enough and had discovered the different paths and the ways in which you went. Now, when you're in that exact same space that earlier had created such incredibly disoriented experiences, now you start to experience a sense of order and a sense of familiarity. What's happened is you've taken this space and you've converted it now into a place. The same thing happened for the ancients looking at the nighttime skies. And maybe you can remember a time where you've been up north or away from the cities and you've looked up at the heavens and you've seen the entire expanse of the Milky Way and all the unnumberable amounts of stars in the sky. And they didn't necessarily make any sense. Now, you felt grounded and in a place here on our earth, but you would not have been able to orient yourself in that nighttime sky anywhere else. This was exactly what the ancients felt. They were in awe of the heavens, but they were unable to make any sense of it until they started to make landmarks, until they started to finally find their way and to begin to connect together different ones of these stars into various constellations. These constellations suddenly give an orientation to the cosmos for our ancient observers. They are now able to chart and to see, and they note that even some of the brightest stars in the nighttime sky, they don't seem to move in the same order as the rest of these. Instead, they seem to move as particularly bright movements differentiated from the stars. And these, of course, are our planets. And then noticing that the planets are moving from one place to another in the nighttime sky relative to the other stars can only come once you have attributed and created place where there had previously been space. So let's take a moment to just unpack the learning that had taken place in our most ancient example here. The stars did not change when they were named or identified. What changed was the observer's familiarity with them. This means then that the meaning and the place of the stars was ascribed and constructed by people. Putting the constellations in the nighttime sky does not change those stars. It only changes the observers of the stars. So once this first orientation was made, it's now possible, once you have this foundational learning, it is now possible to make further discoveries, to scaffold further learning onto this. And so the structure of the first meaning was built up into further learning. In terms of problem solving, moving to our second parallel track along with the constructivist learning, our first scene illustrates that the ancients realized that a problem existed, namely that they were disoriented when looking at the nighttime sky.